Trouble in the shed. The Fat Controller sat in his office listening to the noise outside. The passengers were angry. The station master knocked and came in, looking worried. "There's trouble in the shed, sir," he said. "Henry is sulking, there's no train, and the passengers are saying that this is a bad railway." "Indeed," said the Fat Controller, and went to find Gordon, James and Henry, who were all looking very cross. "Come along, Henry," he said. "It's time your train was ready." "Henry's not going," said Gordon. "We won't shunt like common tank engines. That was Thomas's job. We are important tender engines. You fetch our coaches and we will pull them. Tender engines don't shunt." And all three engines let off steam in a cheeky way. "Oh, indeed," said the Fat Controller sternly. "We'll see about that. Engines on my railway do as they are told." And he hurried away to find Edward. The yard has never been the same since Thomas left to run his branch line, he thought sadly. Edward was shunting. "Leave those trucks, please, Edward," said the Fat Controller. "I want you to push coaches for me in the yard." "Thank you, sir. That will be a nice change," said Edward. So Edward found coaches for the three engines, and that day the trains ran as usual. But when the Fat Controller came the next morning, Edward looked unhappy. Gordon came clanking past, hissing rudely. "Bless me!" said the Fat Controller. "What a noise!" They all hiss at me, sir," answered Edward. "They say tender engines don't shunt." "Tender engines do shunt, but all the same we do need another tank engine here," said the Fat Controller. He went to the workshop and they showed him all sorts of engines. There were big engines and little ones. At last he saw a smart little green engine with 4 wheels. "That's the one," he said to himself. "If I choose you, will you work hard?" "Oh, sir, yes, sir," said the green engine. That's a good engine," said the Fat Controller. "I'll call you Percy." And he brought Percy back to the yard. "Edward," he called, "here's Percy. Will you show him everything?" Percy soon learned what he had to do, and they had a happy afternoon. Then Henry came by, hissing as usual. "Whee!" said Percy suddenly. Henry jumped and ran back to the shed. "How beautifully you wheezed him!" laughed Edward. "I can't wheeze like that." "Oh," said Percy, "that's nothing. You should hear them in the workshop. You have to wheeze loudly to make yourself heard." Next morning, Thomas arrived. "The Fat Controller has sent for me. I expect he wants help," he said to Edward. "Shh, shh, here he comes," replied Edward. "Well done, Thomas," said the Fat Controller. "You've been quick. Listen, Henry, Gordon and James are sulking. They say they won't shunt like common tank engines. So I have shut them up and I want you both to run the line for a while." "Common tank engines indeed," snorted Thomas. "We'll show them." "And Percy will help too," said the Fat Controller. "Oh, sir! Yes, sir! Please, sir!" answered Percy excitedly. Edward and Thomas worked the main line, greeting each other as they passed by. Percy puffed along the branch line. Thomas was anxious about Annie and Clarabelle, but both the driver and the guard promised to take care of them. There were fewer trains, but the passengers didn't mind. They knew that the other 3 engines were having a lesson. Gordon, James and Henry stayed in the shed. They were cold, lonely and miserable. They wished now that they hadn't been so silly.